in terms of the latest developments on the Fanish Murthy iGate case. Now, Araceli Royce, who was, of course, the lady who had filed a sexual harassment suit against Fanish Murthy, her lawyer has said that they're now contemplating court action against Fanish as well as iGate. In fact, they have said that iGate too is liable for the actions of Fanish. And in fact, what they've also said was that although Royce had a relationship with Fanish Murthy since 2010, this was under duress. She was doing this, because she was engaged in an abusive and harassing relationship with Fanish Murthy. Not just that, Royce's lawyers also said that, Fanish had told Royce to leave the company to protect his position as the CEO. In fact, they are also alleging that Fanish has violated, in fact, the U.S. Employment Act. Not just that, Fanish, of course, has said that Royce's comments on extortion as well as defamatory comments that he's made about Royce are, in fact, an attempt to blame Royce for the relationship. So it's not just Fanish, actually. iGate's also getting deeply involved in this whole development. Remember, the stock of an iGate, which is listed on NASDAQ, has tumbled close to 13% ever since this development came out day before. Last night as well, you can see 4% off for an iGate. In fact, earlier this morning as well, we caught up with Randall Amon Smith, who's the attorney for Araceli Royce, and on what course of action they're contemplating in the future.
I don't want to go into more specifics than are already in the statement. We would not have responded with these public statements except for the fact that Mr. Murthy said the things he said publicly. So I don't really want to go into a lot more detail. Just say that this is a case where Mr. Murthy abused his position as the employer to insinuate himself into my client's life and ultimately to coerce her into a relationship that she would not have entered into had she not been employed. And that's really all we want to say about it at this time. Mr. Murthy's press conference, which I haven't been able to listen to in total, but I was able to get most of the sound bites from, if I can use that term. My feeling is just nothing he said was true except my client's name. What he said about the length of relationship and everything else that he said is just not so. So, and that if I'm not mistaken, he's now saying he doesn't feel it's appropriate to comment further. So that doesn't surprise me. But what we said in our release today is what we would expect to prove in court and what we believe we will prove. And so that's all I can say at this time. Well, I want to be clear. There are two different issues. One of them is that under California law, Mr. Murthy's acts are the acts of iGate. So iGate, because he is an officer and director of the company, what he does is as if the company had done it. Even if some other board members were unaware of it or if they had known about it, they would have disapproved of it. The fact that he did it is sufficient to impose liability on the company. But there's a second issue, which was whether or not iGate determines through an investigation that Mr. Murthy has committed or engaged in sexual harassment. Their investigation, iGate's investigation, is not complete yet. I believe that when it is complete, they will conclude that there was sex harassment, but because they're not through yet, I don't know what they will ultimately conclude.